Hey Crown Rebellion, this is Jamie. I'm with David Smith, and he has battled with mental illness pretty much his entire life, and this is his story. Have you always known you've had a mental illness?
No. Um, Growing up, it was always, I guess the start of it was being called shy. Shy. Oh, he's just really shy. He's just shy. I'm just shy. And that was the first time I can recollect someone giving a term to something that was abnormal about me. Um, Shyness now we know to be social anxiety, and then there's all sorts of levels and degrees to that. As far as depression, honestly don't feel I had depression until after puberty, about puberty, after puberty. I don't recall. As a child, I remember the social anxiety, the shyness really being pronounced, but I don't remember being depressed. I was actually happy, and though there were some traumas in my life, I was from a single parent household, and had some traumas with a babysitter for years and years and years. I would get dropped off in the morning and then come back to them after school, and she was an alcoholic, and she was very abusive, and it was some very upsetting times, and school was tough at times because I was so shy. But other than that, had a fairly happy childhood, and I don't feel I was depressed. I got a lot of fun, and I really think back almost 90% happy memories of my childhood.
When did you notice the shift?
Like I said, it was puberty, junior high-ish. It just suddenly it was the shyness got taken to a new level, just inability to interact with people naturally, feeling comfortable. So I would avoid social situations. I spent almost all of my junior high school years and some of my high school years literally in the library in a cubicle staring at a book because I did not know how to relate to other people. I was just too terrified of it all. And the depression started coming in, and that's when I started first having, in high school, thoughts of suicide. Yeah, so that's when it really started to hit me all at once.
Did you try to escape these feelings and your anxiety?
Well, at the time, again, it was shyness. Depression was just like, oh, everybody has down days. It was that time. It wasn't a time where people were easily or quickly diagnosed. People were just still using old-fashioned terms to describe behavior. And so. My escapes at that time, I didn't really have a lot. I had hobbies and stuff, so I would do hobbies. I did like photography. I started that fairly early. I liked shooting. I would go out shooting. I liked tricking out my truck, as a lot of young guys do, and putting all sorts of radios and speakers and. I had a CB radio and all sorts of fun stuff in there, and I'd just go on long night drives and speed around and just be reckless, So I guess being reckless, trying to get that adrenaline flow was probably my biggest way of dealing with it at that time. And then I discovered alcohol, and alcohol seemed to fix everything. The only problem is I didn't know at the time. I didn't know in the process of making me feel better in that moment of being drunk, I was making everything else worse, my life worse, other people around me who cared for me miserable. So that was my first ways of coping with it.
And after the alcohol, you eventually found drugs, right?
Yes, I went from alcohol to start using marijuana, and so actually alcohol was the gateway drug for me. Then it went to marijuana, and then marijuana. You start associating with other people who smoke marijuana, and then you start getting into that circle, and you know you're at a young age, and you're everything. It's cool to listen to music and be stoned and drink and party and go to parties, and so suddenly you're in a room and a drug comes up, and so it's cocaine or it's ecstasy or LSD or speed or whatever it was come up. You start doing those things and you just start partying, and that's how I have a bad day. Not feeling good. Hey, call some friends up and hey man, let's party. I really want to party. And that was the terminology I think a lot of people used who weren't happy with their lives or may have had underlying issues. Like, let's party. Yeah, I need to get wasted. I need to get fucked up. And that was, I think, a code word for trying to fix something that was broken, but we didn't even have the slightest understanding of what was broken, how it got broken or anything like that. It was just trying to deal with the symptoms of the depression or anxiety or whatever we were feeling by self-medicating.
And you eventually quit your drugs and your alcohol. How did you come to that decision?
Well, I spent my 20s, I'd say, my late teens to mid 20s were drugs. I played music, guitar, and was experimenting with a lot of things, and it just got to a point where I had been really doing soul searching with the drugs. I mean, it wasn't just an escape for me. I have never been able to turn off my brain. So even when I was on drugs, I would be constantly trying to find answers and solutions and constantly questioning, why is this happening? Why am I doing that? Why, why? I've never been able to shut off the whys in my head. And so I just eventually, I put enough pieces together to know that I was not doing myself any long-term benefit, and that I still didn't know that I was mentally ill. But I knew that drinking and drugs and hanging out and staying out all night and all that kind of behavior was some sort of attempt at dealing with a pain, sorrow that I did not know how else to deal with. So I decided, well, I'm doing all this, it's not working, so I'm just going to stop. And so I took I quit my job, and I broke up with my girlfriend at the time, and I decided to go on a soul-searching adventure, sort of, in Utah, where I had an uncle who said, hey, I could come out there and hang out and, maybe find a job or start over, because I had been in the same town my entire life. So I thought that, the change of scenery and being in a new place, no drugs, blah, 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 I'd work out whatever it is I needed to do, because I still didn't have a direction in life, mind you. I mean, in my mid-20s, I didn't know what I wanted to be. I didn't know what I wanted to do. Just knew I didn't want to do drugs anymore. I didn't want to continue to do stuff where it was hurting me. So I went to Utah. There was no more friends, no more connections to drugs, no more parties. It's just me and long walks through the mountains and the fields. And the nearest town was 2-hour walk away, and if not more, it might have been more than 2 hours away. So, I just got sober that way. And then the problem was, though, once I got sober, my depression and my anxiety came back full force. And I was in a place where I knew nobody. My anxiety prevented me from making friends. I just couldn't. I just would walk and walk and walk and walk through towns but never talk to anybody. I just could not open myself to relationships of any kind. So eventually the loneliness is what drove me back to go back to my hometown. But at that point, I had done enough soul searching to know that the drugs weren't the answer. So even though I went back and tried to acquaint myself with some old friends, because I'm human, I need to be socially active to feel complete, and so they were all doing drugs around me, and I wasn't doing drugs, and I didn't have a problem doing drugs, and so those relationships slowly disintegrated because nobody who does drugs wants to be around someone who's sober, and nobody who's sober really wants to be around people who are doing drugs. So my relationships started to disintegrate, and I would just. I still, even at that point, I think at that point when I had come back to my hometown, a place called Sonoma, that I had started to realize there's something wrong with me. Yeah, at that point I realized there's something wrong with me.
And do you find that's when you hit rock bottom with your mental illness?
No. It took a couple more years. Of basically, again, no drugs, no, losing all my friends, unable to be socially active in any way whatsoever. I stopped answering phone calls. Anybody. My mom for well over a year. Actually, it turned out overall to be 2-3 years. I put it together. I wouldn't answer the phone. My mom, I wouldn't answer the door. My mom would have to actually leave things at my front door. I was able to maintain a job because I was a projectionist at a theater. So what better job for someone with social anxiety, which had morphed into what is called avoidant personality disorder, which is a heightened social anxiety that makes, instead of just being anxious around people, you just avoid people completely. So I'm jumping in and out of windows to avoid crowds. I'm walking across the street, I'm making long beelines, I'm waiting until people leave an area before I enter an area. Just in crazy amounts of energy to avoid human contact. And at that point I got to the point where I was so socially isolated and so lonely. My depression was full force. No drugs to help me. That then I started to really start to hallucinate. I guess is the best way I could say. I thought that the end of the world was going to come in 2000, and I started to prepare for it. I spent every credit card I have going to Costco, and my little studio was filled the wall, 5 feet tall with canned beans and chili and soups and canned vegetables and fruits, and I had got thousands of rounds of ammunition, and I had assault rifles and all the gear I would need, water purifiers. I was ready for the end of the world, and I was ready to I had created a hit list of the people that I would kill, and I would take the assets that they had, and to rebuild my new life in this post-apocalyptic world. I was just waiting for it to end so that I could start. And I think now, looking back on the delusion, it was a way to justify my life, because if I didn't have that, then why was I alive at all? I might as well just kill myself. And so that was still, even though it was crazy and violent and a little scary, it was still my way of trying to preserve my own life. And that's when I hit rock bottom.